Hey guys, today we're here in the studio at the shop. As part of this series on kits and preparedness, a friend has asked me to go through their kit and their pack and just see what I thought about how they had it set up. Now this person doesn't work in a city in a high-rise or anything like that. They work out in the suburbs and they live out in the suburbs, and they spend more time even further out in the country at another place most of the time. So this is not going to have probably much in the way of urban survival or urban mitigation. So just bear that in mind on this one. It's not quite like the kit I went through earlier, so it may give you more food for thought in how you want to set yours up, just in case you work, in a more suburban area or more of a wilderness area. And some of the things that I have set up in mind for the urban environment are non-applicable to your situation, just like it is to his. And so give me just a minute to back off the camera and reset up the angle, and we'll start digging into this pack that he's got set up in what appears to be a U.S. issue medium Allice pack, much like one I carried for a lot of miles back in 1985. So it's pretty familiar, and with the compartmentalization of it. And give me just a minute and we'll get into it. As I said, this is a medium U.S. issue Allice pack, and the way it is configured is one main compartment and three secondary compartments on the outside, all of equal size. And you just split up your gear into it. He's going to have this completely set up than we had ours set up during basic training. So this is going to be more of a civilian application of a military issue piece of equipment. First off, you see he's got the hatchet. I mean, that's the first thing you notice on the outside. Great tool to have, especially here in our rainforest. Lots of things, for busting pine knots, for starting fires in the rain, for busting black walnuts, to be able to eat, busting hickory nuts, because those you don't want to crack with a rock. You beat your fingers apart and then you get crumbles of stone all in them, and then it's just not good. Hatchets are great to have for that, much less the obvious of splitting kindling and chopping poles for shelters or firewood, what have you. Absolutely always carry a hatchet in the woods. And actually in an urban environment, it can be used as a breaching tool. I should bring that up. Getting through doors, getting through windows, chopping out windshields of vehicles to rescue people. It's never a bad thing to have a good hatchet or a tomahawk or cutting weapon with a pole, with a handle. Okay, first off on the outside, you see he's got a multi-tool. What is this? This is the Leatherman Wingman. I like the Leatherman. It can be taken off of here and put in his pocket clip. Great. Always good to have a pair of pliers, even in a wilderness environment, but in an urban environment, great to have a multi-tool. You can use it to turn on the water spigots in buildings to access water on most of them. Some of them are a little tough to use a multi-tool on, but most of them you can. Plus it has, driver bits and blades and serrated blade and what have you for cutting. Great. I always suggest people they can only have one knife, make it a multi-tool. This I found interesting. I haven't seen one of these in a while. But this is the Old Timer Splinter wood carving tool. Awesome tool to have in a primitive living situation, because it's the curved blades and what have you are great. I don't know if you can see this. I'd like to do a close-up of it later maybe when I get it on the table. But in a primitive living situation, when you're making tools from bamboo or from wood or whatever, having multiple shapes of blades is great for all those little notches and everything. In bushcraft classes, we learned how to make Morris Krachanski's tri-stick using nothing but a knife with a 4-inch blade, but this would simplify that a lot and especially if you're making small things like trap triggers, fishing gigs, frog gigs, things that have small detail to it. Great piece of equipment to have. I haven't seen one in years. And he's got here, let's see it, turn it around here, attached to the outside, paracord bracelet, always good. You notice I'm carrying mine always. One of the things I teach my students is durable cordage is not easily found in a lot of areas in nature. And, you know, in order to make a bow drill or to, you know, make a swamp bed where you got to tie the tripod of sticks together, you know, 3 different sticks, and make a tripod that doesn't sink down into the soft earth to make a platform on. Having good, strong cordage is a must. Saves a lot of time of braiding strong cordage out of vines or grasses. Okay, so let's dig into the pockets. Okay. I'm not going to take this all the way out and separate it, but what he has in here, in this pocket, is completely dedicated to his hammock setup. And he has all his cords and his hammock and everything in there ready to go. Speaking of swamp beds, having a hammock in this terrain, this is a rainforest. In subtropics, in a rainforest, hammocks are the best option. Sleeping on the wet ground is not good for your health. There's a lot of things crawling around on the ground you might not necessarily want crawling around on you. Being able to get up off the ground is essential to getting rest and being able to rest well, safely. And having a hammock to be able to tie it between trees takes infinitely less time than building a platform in a wet area to be able to get off the ground. So that's brilliant. That's absolutely the best way to go about sleeping in the woods. And in an urban environment, sometimes you can get in an abandoned building and break out some of the sheetrock and, you know, access the studs in the walls and tie a hammock to that corner to corner in a room, and it'll get you off the floor so you don't have to worry so much about rats and other prowling insects and stuff. It gives them less of an avenue to get to you. So, okay, what do we got in this one? This one we got buffs. Okay, and not just any buffs, but buffs with good information. This one has knot tying techniques on it. That's great. I like that. It's hard to remember all the different knots, and some knots work better for some applications than others. Some just don't do well. So being able to tie a knot that's strong but easy to release is not always easy to remember in your mind. You can remember the basic ones, but some of them are more complicated, and if you have this, you can use it to refresh your memory. This one has different helps and hints for long distance signaling, uses for paracord, you know, improvised navigation, what to do if you're lost. I mean, it's really great to have these sorts of things, because it also serves as, you can tie this up where it can be seen, or if you're wandering through the woods, you can actually rip it in small shreds and tie it around tree limbs and then find your way back if you're going down an area you're not familiar with and you want to trace your way back, or if you're leaving someone behind in an unfamiliar area to go access water or whatever, and you're coming back in the dark. Having these tied every so often up in tree limbs, you hit it with your flashlight, you can find your way back without having to use up your battery to watch the trail the entire way and look for all the landmarks. Just an absolutely great piece of equipment to have. Saw. Yes. Saws are wonderful. They save a lot of energy. Chopping takes a lot of energy. Saws allow you to work smarter, not harder, so I'm glad to see that. This, I'm going to have to ask him what it is before I can even, you know, express an opinion on it. It's pretty cool looking, but I can't. The ends don't easily come off, so I don't know if that's because it's just oxidized together or if they've been soldered together and this is something completely different. So I don't know what it is. And We'll have to come back to this at some point when I've had a chance to talk to him. I'm not going to mess with it when I don't know what it is. The pocket shot. This is a pretty cool thing. I've played with them a little bit, not much. I've shot some tin cans with them here and there. But slingshot of some sort is great to be able to feed yourself in a wilderness environment quietly. You know, different parts of the world, they still hunt birds with slingshots in a different rainforest. And so that's, having a slingshot, you'll see some knives that are designed for jungle survival that have the slingshot built in. A-Tord does that, where it has the arm built into the sheath, and then the rubber stores in a compartment inside the sheath. That's cool. Oh, and a folding shovel. Folding shovels are really good, and especially in a primitive living situation where you can dig a latrine, or you can dig up, if you're fishing, you can dig up bait, you can dig up worms. You can do a lot of different things with a folding shovel. They're good to have. They're heavy, but they're good to have along. And speaking of weight, I was trying to feel this. I think it weighs about 35 pounds, just so you know, frame and all. So that's so you know what we're working with here and what all he's got. Don't want to get his pack completely twisted around and lost and disorganized. And this one, got an emergency bivvy, always good to have, especially in cold, wet environments. You can get your body in here, take a couple of hot hands, put down in your socks, and keep your feet warm, keeps your blood circulating through. I've mentioned these in my videos before. Bivvy bags are great to have. This is standard flint and steel kit. If you know how to use one of these are great. They can save your lighter, they can save your matches on dry days. Flint and steel is a good skill to learn. This is a water collection, carrying, and purifying and cooking system. Is a steel water bottle, steel pot. There's a lid for the pot in here to minimize the time it takes to boil water. It's a good thing to have. They're a little heavy, and I've moved on to putting a grail in mine and just not worrying about boiling the water now that I've found the grails. But for years, I built my kits around this right here. The ability to have and boil water and collect it and carry it. So that, because that was the only thing, I didn't like iodine tablets, and I preferred the natural way to purify water, and boiling it kills off anything that's organic. So you don't have to worry about it. If there's any live things in it, basically boiling it just cooks it and turns it into more protein, if you can look at it that way. Let's see. Now, give me just a second, and I'm going to rearrange some things, and we'll dig into the inside. Give me just a minute. Okay, going into the main compartment here, there's these Allice packs have storage in the flap too. So in here, he's got some tinder materials and some Sweet Fire strikable fire starter from UCO, and it's sealed. So plenty of tinder material. I like that. And this is what appears to be petroleum jelly cotton balls or something similar. Great to have in a rainforest. We have lots of natural tinder in areas here. We have a lot of pine knots in some areas. Some areas you get in, it's all hardwood forest, and you don't want to depend on that. When I'm walking along in the woods, I always grab the first couple of small pine knots I run across. If I don't already have some of my kids, stick in my pocket just in case. It's just a habit that I developed almost 50 years ago. So that's that part of the compartment. Getting into the main part of the compartment, I may have to let him come and reassemble this. What do we got here? We got the Pathfinder 3-piece takedown fishing arrow. So that's great to have. In our rainforest with the river here, fishing is your easiest to gain source of protein as far as meat goes. There's rabbits that are pretty easy in some places. I mean, you can practically scare a rabbit to death. But, you know, taking on squirrels and that with a slingshot, they're pretty tough. I mean, you gotta hit them just right. Also, as you just like break them up, but they run off anyway. So having that kind of gives you something a little more powerful than the slingshot that he's got in there, and he has something more powerful than that we'll get to here in just a second. The life straw. Now, I've got some of these at home in my kits that were recommended by friends who spend a lot of time doing mission trips and aid missions in Africa. So I've had these around. I've got one or two of them that I've had ever since they came out with them years ago. They're great, but I still try not to get too heavy on water purification. So the Grail, for me, like I said, fills most of my roles. But there's nothing wrong with the straws, especially if you're putting together a smaller kit. If you're putting together a small grab-and-go kit, the life straws are a good option. The Yuko candle lantern. It's a cool piece of kit. It's it'll provide light, and you know, even in the wind. I like them. They're really cool. You can get citronella candles for them, which is great here in this rainforest because during certain times of the year the mosquitoes are just atrocious, and so having a citronella candle. But just remember, if you're burning the citronella candles in them, you need plenty of ventilation. You don't want to be in an enclosed space like a tent or a sealed up debris hut or lean-to shelter. Sawyer. That's what I've gone to instead of the live straw. Is I've got a Sawyer, mini Sawyer actually, that's my backup. And depending on how many people you got, if you got a family, I know he's got a family, I've got a family, it never hurts to have redundant systems when it comes to water. We are absolutely addicted to water because we're completely dependent on it. Our bodies are made up of roughly 70% water, just like our planet. Without it, we die. 3 days without water and you're gone. And that presupposes that you were properly hydrated the day you started not having water. Most of us aren't. So, water. It's hard to complain about somebody having multiple ways to make potable water. This is another portable fishing kit. I've got a different style, but yes, I always have a fishing kit. I've even got one small one that's in a very small tin. It's very minimalist. This is a handrail, and it has the lures and hooks and line all in one. Good idea, because here the rivers are full of fish, the creeks are full of fish. Getting fish, if you're hungry, is going to be the easiest way to get meat anywhere in the southeast, especially the further south you go, the more that's going to be the case. You get near the coast, it's hard to starve along the coast between all the crustaceans and the fish. If you starve there, you're lazy. It's kind of the same way here. The Cherokee thrived here in this environment, you know, for untold years because of all the fish, all the different plants that grow. I mean, our state wildflower is Passiflora incarnata, which is North American passion fruit, and it's edible. They made a jelly out of it, different things. And this is the other Pathfinder takedown arrow. It has multiples of them in its kit. I guess it's two parts of the same system, maybe. Not sure if I'm not familiar with this system, but bows and arrows were the thing here for a long time, and before that it was atlatls. So just having a launchable, sharp projectile will feed you if you're proficient with it and know how to use it. Cordage. Like I said, it's hard to have too much cordage in this environment. It's hard to make here. We don't have a lot of good vegetation for making cordage. Yucca stalks and yucca plants are spreading through the wild parts of our wilderness here because they've been brought in as ornamentals. So that's a good one to make cordage out of. You split the leaves down in strips and then braid it. You can braid grasses, prairie grasses, but we don't have a lot of prairie grass left here. Excuse me, and that's also very time consuming. So having good durable cordage I've always got at least one roll of 550 cord in my pack, and at least some 330 cord. That's this bracelet that I'm wearing is, I think, 25 feet of 330 cord. Oops. Okay, and when I said he had something more powerful than the spear, this is an AR-7. It is this one's made by U.S. Survival. The Henry makes one. Everything stores in the stock. So the barrel, action, 2 magazines, you put it all together and you have a rifle. And it's just a wonderful piece of equipment. If you want to see one of these closer, we have one on display down in the Survival Outpost. If you want to come in and take a look at it, these are great pieces of equipment. They issued them to the U.S. Air Force pilots years ago. For all I know, they may still issue them. It floats. And then we used to keep them in our boats when I was younger, and we did commercial fishing and we did salvage work. We always had a couple of these along because, like I said, they float. If trying to get to shore on some deserted island or small island because your boat's going down, take this with you, then you have a way to defend yourself and a way to hunt, and you can use it as it's not going to weigh you down because it floats. Okay, and then further into here, it looks like it's got clothing sealed in Ziploc bags. That's great. That feels like another one of his slingshot setups. Binoculars. Binoculars are great for scouting, and especially if you're bugging out into a wilderness environment. This allows you to scan your environment at a distance to see if people are encroaching on you, or see if there's threats in the area. Or, to watch game if you're hunting. Binoculars are never a bad idea. Let's see. And this is it's a pillow. I can't fault him there. It can be just good to have a pillow just to get rest, because what a lot of people don't understand is sleep comes at a premium in any kind of bug out situation, urban or wilderness. And it's like I've written several articles on that over the years, that sometimes instead of an actual dedicated shelter, what's most important is just some good quality sleep. And you don't always have to have a shelter that we consider a traditional shelter for that to happen. A hammock in a park, in a crowded park, when you're living on the streets, where mothers are rolling their baby strollers around, and it's unlikely that anybody's going to bother you if you're set up your hammock and just sit there. They think you're hanging out in the park, and you get to catch up on your rest. Because when you're living in a primitive environment, or if you're living in a urban survival environment or living on the streets, you don't always get to sleep at night. At night is when things get dangerous. You get your rest during the day so that you can be on your guard at night. And in some parts of the woods, it's like that too. A lot of the predatory animals are nocturnal, and so night is when things become dangerous. The only thing that I would really suggest to him, and I'll talk to him about that, is eye protection and hand protection and first aid kit. If this is his only grab and go bag, I would do more with first aid. I don't think I missed anything as far as in the compartments. I may have. If I did, I'll stand corrected and I'll come back to it. But having lived off grid, twice for more than a year in my life, once urban and once wilderness, when you don't have access to a doctor anymore, making sure you're able to mitigate infections and protect your eyes, protect your hands becomes extremely important, because statistically speaking, hands are the #1 injuries, and without your hands, you're not going to be able to do much good for yourself. So you want to be able to protect your hands, and you want to be able to doctor and medicate. You use, triple antibiotic ointment, Band-Aids, whatever, to keep infections down, keep dirt out of wounds, so that you heal faster. And eye protection, because we don't think about it a lot, but we're used to the idea of being able to go to the emergency room out here, in our normal world, or go to the doc in the box. But if you've been forced into a primitive living situation through civil unrest or through natural disaster that comes along. I mean, Katrina should have taught a lot of people a lot of things. Eye protection and hand protection is very important. Chopping, if you're going to be chopping, is like, on any construction site, you never see anybody operating a saw that, well, you do, but not anybody that has any sense, that doesn't have safety glasses on. In factories, safety glasses are required. And a lot of people don't think about it, but you really should consider eye protection in your bug out bag, or even in just your wilderness kit. You get sawdust or whatever in your eyes, and it can be very painful. It can do a lot of damage. You can scratch your eyes. It can damage your cornea. So eye protection and first aid would be the only things that I would really recommend, as far as he seems to have all his other bases covered. So hopefully this gives you some food for thought in how you might want to put your kit together, along with the other kits that I've shown you, because we all live in different places, we all live in different areas and face different threats and have different resources. So the more we can share ideas, the better off we're going to be. And I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope this video helps, and I hope this gives you some food for thought in how you might want to put your kits together. And stop in next time, and we'll see what we're getting into.